Hello friends, my name is Marinez. One of the most fascinating conversations that we used to have back in the comments when I was recapping Buffy was whether I disliked things for in or out of story reasons. It was these conversations that really made me hyper aware of the distinction between these two, and it's a question I always ask when I feel myself developing negative feelings. It's a question I like to ask myself, especially now that I'm part of a reviewing community and I know that I value the videos that tell me why they like things or why they dislike things, and it's the kind of content that I strive to make. So I thought it would be cool to make a video discussing some different media that I've disliked for different reasons. There's not really a bottom line here, but just, we're gonna chat. I think the more interesting part is when we dislike things for in-story reasons. These are stories that don't really have any flaws that you perceive in the storytelling, but that you just don't like the story itself. It may also happen that you dislike something that happened in the story, but that's coming from a place of investment. Those are the I hate that this happened to my favorite character kind of feelings. A perfect example of this for me was Mockingjay. If you haven't read through the Hunger Games series, you may consider skipping ahead. I really dislike the ending of this book and of this series for in-story reasons. I understand what Suzanne Collins did and I understand why she did it, but the ending of this story was just devastating to me. There's definitely commentary here about the evils of everything that happened and how the world is happy to move on without Katniss, even though she was so instrumental into creating the society that they are now in. They're happy to leave her behind in District 12, and I feel like in a lot of ways it's because she represents something that they want to move on from. It's just that a certain death in book 3 just undid so much of the story for me. Katniss sacrifices so much and there's no amount of kids frolicking in a field that will undo the sadness that I feel when I think about a society that doesn't have a place for Katniss even though she helped form it. A recent example from something I read is from The School for Good and Evil by Soman Shinani. I rated this 4 stars, so I enjoyed it overall and I'll wrap it up soon properly, but I found myself feeling frustrated with it at times. I had to kind of back it up and realize that the reason I was having these feelings was because Soman created this wonderfully complex and selfish character in Sophie, and she kept doing these things that I hated, but I hated them for in-story reasons. I hated the actions, but they were effective obviously because they were giving me feelings, and I hated them for what they were doing for Agatha, who was my precious cinnamon roll. Most of the times when I'm disliking Game of Thrones, the TV show, it's for in-story reasons. Most of the time. This past season had some questionable choices that it made that had bigger implications for out of the story, especially when it came to rape and calling rape rape. But for the most part, it's a story that really knows how to torture its characters, and because I am invested in a lot of these characters, it also tortures me. I could go on and on about the way that I hate everything that has happened, starting with the fact that the Starks will never be together again. Something that I'm a little bit more vocal about is when I dislike things for out of story reasons, and that's very apparent when I'm counting dashes in A Court of Thorns and Roses or highlighting repetitive phrases in Falling Kingdoms. These are things that exist outside of the story but that have an effect on your enjoyment of the story, and a lot of times these show up when you consider the story in a larger context. I started this video with a brief mention of Buffy, and a lot of you know that season 6 of Buffy robbed me of my will to live. I enjoyed Spike as a character for a while there, as a villain for a while there, right up until season 6. If you don't want spoilers for that season, feel free to skip ahead. Basically, Spike and Buffy get involved in a mutually abusive relationship. It's definitely difficult to watch for in-story reasons because at that point Buffy had become one of my favorite characters of all time, and the circumstances through which she finds herself in this deep depression were really well done as far as a natural progression of her story. I understood why it happened, and it really did feel natural, the place that it was coming from, that it was a natural reaction of this character. Out of story, no. There were a couple of scenes, specifically one that I remember in The Bronze, where Buffy tells Spike no, as in I do not want to have sex with you, and he takes that as optional, and everyone is like, it's okay, it's cool because he's evil and it's the kind of stuff that he does. But at the same time, it's a lot of those people that are like, yep, love it, ship it. It was rape and it wasn't called as rape, and that's so clear a little bit further in the series when there's an attempted rape and it's a big deal, but you've been watching all of these episodes of them be abusive to each other, and Spike just completely ignore her consent or lack thereof. And then this explicit attempted rape scene is never explored from the point of view of the victim. It's used as this jumping off point for a redemption arc of the male character. No, that's a horrible story. That's a horrible message. And everything that happens afterward with Spike in a freaking cave because he can now do like 3 tasks and he gets a soul and it's supposed to make, you know, like the rape and attempted rape all better. No, I cannot. I think this idea is especially interesting when you're looking at the quality of villains who are in essence created to be hated. So you have someone like Dolores Umbridge, who is almost universally abhorred. We hate her for in-story reasons, and the fact that we can all come together and just say that this is one of the most hated villains really goes to show you that Rowling did a great job creating her. I recently talked about Aaron from The Knife of Never Letting Go and how much I dislike him as a villain for out-of-story reasons. I just felt like he wasn't as well done. The interesting part is that I'm halfway through the Ask and the Answer, and Mayor Prentice, who is another villain within the series, is turning out to be one of the best, worst villains that I've ever read about. He's so creepy and slimy, and he's not absolutely evil. Like, he does good and bad things, so it really keeps you off balance, and I think that it's an amazing villain to read about, and it just surprises me that Mayor Prentice and Aaron exist within the same series. I feel like everything I talked about is common sense ideas that we all know about, but they're still really interesting to take a step back from and really consider what are things that you've liked for in and out of story reasons. I'm curious if any of you think along these lines, or maybe you do and never realize that you do, or maybe you've never really tried to make the distinction. Let's chat down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. A perfect example of this for me was like, good job, if you do 3 tasks, you're fine now.